Talk Real Estate with Sharon McNamara, sponsored by Boston Connect Real Estate Services.
Hi, I'm Sharon McNamara, and you are listening to Talk Real Estate Roundtable. Let me share a little bit about my background before we get started. I am the broker-owner of Boston Connect Real Estate, a boutique real estate firm that is home to over 30 real estate sales and marketing consultants who service home buyers and home sellers throughout Boston, the South Shore, the South Coast, and Cape Cod. Our firm takes pride in assisting our clients in the next chapter of their lives by taking a holistic approach to their real estate endeavors. We believe that every move should be a moving experience. Every week, my real estate team member, Mary Baker, and I, along with the director of Boston Connect Real Estate, Melissa Wallace, provide you with our unique marketing approach to selling homes and share with you our expertise in navigating the home buying process. We like to mix it up sometimes, so not only will you hear our perspective on real estate topics, but you will hear the expert thoughts and opinions of some of our real estate agents at Boston Connect Real Estate and the preferred professionals that we trust. Be part of our roundtable. If you have any questions during the show, please call 781-837-4900. We'd love to talk real estate. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and wherever you listen to podcasts at Talk Real Estate Roundtable. If you would like a one-on-one consultation with me and my team or one of the dedicated agents at Boston Connect Real Estate to discuss your real estate needs, you can connect with us at bostonconnect.com or 781-826-8000. Now, sit back, relax, take good notes, and let's talk real estate.
Scottish brogue.
And hello to all our South Shore neighbors. You are listening to Talk Real Estate Roundtable. My name is Melissa Wallace, and I am joined in studio with the one and only Sharon McNamara.
Hello, and good morning.
Good morning. I wasn't caught eating my breakfast like I was last Saturday.
I know. You are like, what's that saying?
Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
I don't know why. I think maybe I'm just so tired that I'm like so awake. Is that a thing?
I don't know. I've been getting some really good night's sleeps lately, so it feels good. And we have Tim, obviously, in our WATD studio. He is our favorite producer because we're pretty sure none of the other ones are listening right now. No, sorry.
Wow. Okay.
No.
Well,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I just don't want to hurt their
their
feelings. I mean, you know the truth off air, right? I mean, seriously. So we have Tim in studio at WATD. We are here in our home studio right here in Pembroke Center, 19 Matakeesa Street, right across the street from Stop and Shop. Hey, if you're listening and you want to see what it looks like to see our show in action, come on over, or you can watch us on Facebook.
Just don't bang on the windows.
Yeah,
please.
don't bang on the windows.
Do that. No.
Exactly. Don't make any noise as you come in the door, but you are welcome to come see our home studio here. We have a couple great guests with us today, too. You want to do the honors?
Oh, okay. Well, so we have Joe Campbell, Hanson Planning Board Committee Chairman. Hello, Joe.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks for coming. And you listen to us, too, right?
I do.
Yeah.
That's how we met.
That's how we met.
That's how we met.
You called a couple of weeks ago. And we were like, oh, someone's listening to us.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's a great show. That's a great idea.
Yeah,
so
and here you are a couple weeks later. So anybody out there who wants to be on the show, just give us a call, and you'll be on in a couple weeks.
Your dreams come true.
Your dreams come true. And we also have Judith Parks, which is Pembroke Affordable Housing Committee Chairman. Hello, Judith.
Good morning, and thanks again for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, and I want to say, too, with Judy, she's one of my favorite people in town. I mean, she has quite the reputation of being, you give so much. You really give so much to the town.
Well, so do you.
Well, no, not as much as you do. Because honestly, you've been on boards, you've been on committees, you're volunteering, you're doing this, you're doing that. And it's just, for me, I just want to say, it's really been an honor to be sitting with you on some of your boards and doing things with you. And I'm learning so much from you. So I really do appreciate that. And I appreciate you.
Thanks so very much. Thank you.
Yeah. And so right now I sit on the, I am on the committee for affordable housing in the town of Pembroke. And Judy is the chairperson for that, and Joe is on the Hanson Planning Board. And we have been talking about affordable housing. On the affordable housing aspect of things, for what we've been talking about is we need to do a show, because I think that there are a lot of things that we need to clear the air on and sort of get away the voodoo word of
the stigma.
The stigma of a 40B,
Sure.
right? So I want to talk about that. And then, Joe, you called in a few weeks ago and you had told us about, the article that was passed, right? Was it an article or what was it?
Article 33 of the recent May town meeting.
Yes.
It was about accessory dwelling for lots in Hanson.
Perfect. Yeah, so I'm so excited to learn about that. My husband, actually, Mark, he's probably listening this morning. Good morning, Mark. I love you. He's getting ready. We're going to Chris Stapleton tonight.
Great.
So, yeah. So, Anyways,
He's getting ready already.
he is.
11 o'clock.
Well, we're doing an open house after
Grow
this
in
as
the
well.
beard.
Yeah, exactly. But he asked me this morning who was on and what we were doing, and he started asking me questions, and I was like, well, that's why he's on the show. I don't know.
Yeah, call in, Mark.
But I did say this morning is my favorite shows are the shows that I don't know the answers to. Right? So a lot of times I'll ask questions. I already know the answer. It's for our listeners. But today I'm really here about learning. So if I ask too many questions, just slow me down. We just have to do a little housekeeping before we get started. So do you know the number of Broadway? So the Grady team has a listing over in Hanover.
Yep, it's 280 Broadway in Hanover. It is back on market. So if you missed the opportunity to see this amazing house, Sharon and I have both seen it in person. It is beautiful. It's a ranch in Hanover. 280 Broadway.
Right near Previty's, like right there, like when you're coming up the road to it. Yeah, it's gorgeous. So
it's gorgeous.
What time are they going to be there?
They don't have a scheduled open house.
Oh, okay.
But it is back on market. So if you want to see it, obviously call your agent. But if you're not working with an agent, call the Grady team directly. And they're hold on.
That's okay. I'll talk while you're saying that. The house is beautiful. It is a ranch, and lots of great features, really nicely done.
Yeah.
Nice backyard.
Tracy Grady's number is 617-620-8484. But again, you can go to bostonconnect.com and find all of their contact information. It is a great house. And again, if you missed the opportunity the first time it was on, here's your opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And it didn't fall apart for any particular reason. It was probably like a little bit of Byron Morse type thing.
Yeah.
Which we talk about. We talk about this all the time. People rush into things
Kristen
and then they have time to think about it.
Kristen and I just did a show on this on Tuesday about why houses come back on the market.
Yep.
So, and here we are talking about a house that came back on the market. So.
I also want to give a little plug for, I believe it's Emmy Flaherty is today and then tomorrow, same time, from 9 to 11 at 22 Raymond Ave in Pembroke. It is my listing. It's a small ranch, and it was done over, so they did a nice job, with paint and things like that. So if you are in the area and you're looking for a small 3-bedroom ranch, it's on for $379.9. Emmy Flaherty, full-time real estate agent here at Boston Connect Real Estate, will be there today, 9 to 11, and Kate Fisher will be there tomorrow, 9 to 11 as well. Obviously, Kate is a full-time real estate agent here at Boston Connect too.
Okay.
And there we go.
Where are you going to be?
Oh, and then today I am going to be, Judy, you're going to love this one. Have you ever been in the Meadows? Any of the ones that's Kevin Sealand?
No, I haven't,
Come
actually.
visit me today. They're so beautiful. And I sent Kevin Sealand, he's a builder in our area, and he did the Meadows in 1996 or something. I don't even remember what year it was. So I have the Meadows. It's on. It is a 2-bedroom, first floor, primary suite with a full bath and everything. Nicely done, has a finished lower level. So come see me. When am I there? 12 to 2.
12 to 2
I'll be there
today.
12 to 2 with Mr. Mark McNamara, and that's on for $650. But I sent Kevin a text, and I was like, Kevin, it's so nice to do, to have a resale that's one of your properties, and it's timeless. It's timeless elegance, and I know that sounds like something that I came up with for ChatGPT, but it is not. It really is good. All right, let's get on to our topic. You go.
Okay, we're talking about affordable housing insights. Okay, so
Take it from there.
take it from there. Okay, so the state of affordable housing. So what's sort of the state of the affordable housing in Hanson, Pembroke, or any local towns here we got going on?
Do you want to go first, Judy?
Sure, I'm happy to go first because I've spent most of my career in affordable housing. The state of affordable housing, period, in the Commonwealth is disastrous. I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, that is sort of the backdrop to where we are. And regionally, in the South, on the South Shore, it's dismal. I mean, it really is. I mean, when you look at what area median income is, and you look at what the cost of rents are, and then you look at what the cost of land and building and existing houses are, there's really a great mismatch between that and income. So there's a real problem. So in Pembroke and surrounding communities, 40B has been the vehicle that has really increased inventory, but you have to understand that affordable housing under 40B is very specific, and it's usually geared to the higher end of the market. People who earn usually over 80% of AMI, which is plus $80,000 plus.
Explain to everybody what AMI is.
Area median income is the amount of money that income that people have, and they HUD actually does these wonderful charts. If you just Google HUD AMI, and it tells you what the area median income is: 60%, 40%, 30% is considered very low income, and those are the people who typically live, if they get able to find something, in public housing or with a Section 8 certificate. But others higher AMIs are used for other kinds of housing, such as tax credit and a 40B type housing. So.
And every town is different too, right? So that's, I mean, when you're talking about that AMI, I mean, maybe I would qualify for something in Cohasset.
Well, actually, it's regional. It's regional. So the AMI for the South Shore is much the same as Suffolk County. So it's the same as Boston, because we're in the Boston metropolitan area. So it's the same. It gets less when you go, at the South Coast. You go out to the Berkshires, Bristol. It gets less there. Of course, the wages are always less, and that's really the issue. But it's an important number to look at, because when you look at people who work in many of the jobs in even in local government, they qualify under the 440B type developments or tax credits, and yet we want them to live and stay in our towns. So it's and there's not enough of that kind of housing available.
And can you explain to people too, and then we'll have Joe sort of tell us more about Hanson as well. And then if anybody is listening and you have any questions about this topic or insight or anything, please feel free to call in to the studio, 781-837-4900. We'd love to hear from you, and Joe did that a couple weeks ago, which is why he's here. The process of a 40B, we don't want to get into the weeds with planning and zoning and all that other stuff, but the percentage that each town, the state, it's the state regulate that wants every town, right? Right.
So 40B has been on the books for actually a very long time. It was the Anti-Snob Zoning Act, and it actually came about with a church built on built housing years ago in one of the western suburbs. And, it kind of sat dormant for a long time until land prices and housing prices started really skyrocketing back, particularly in the 80s. And then it became a way for developers to increase the supply of affordable housing and other housing by using this 40B statute to bypass local zoning and do all of that. Each town is required under the statute to have 10% of its housing affordable, and that is state certified affordable. So it's not that I'm renting my house for a little bit less than maybe its market value is. It has to be state certified. So therefore, there's a whole process for selling or renting that involves wait lists and advertising and all those kind of things. But that is the number that is the benchmark. I want to say one thing though, is that 10% is actually a very small number when you look at the number of people in our towns that would qualify for housing built under that statute. So, for example, in Pembroke, we have decided we want to get to 15%, which probably isn't enough anyway, but still it brings us above the 10% threshold, and it provides opportunities for more people to have affordable housing, and excuse me, and it also gives the town more control over the permitting of these things. I mean, the big pushback on 40B when the town is under 10% is that the developer essentially is holding the reins. And while the town can mitigate some of the things, it's very difficult to stop a development, to really rein a development in if the town is not at the 40%, at the 10% threshold. When you get over the 10% threshold, you still use the 40B process, but the town at that point has the ability to say, okay, we're not looking at anything over a certain density. We want certain setbacks. We want things on certain neighborhoods. The town has much more latitude in controlling and actually placing developments and that kind of development in places that they think appropriate. So it gives the town a real benefit to do that, and that's something that we as an Affordable Housing Committee are really pushing, looking for more friendly type 40Bs.
And that was the question Joe had asked me earlier about friendly 40Bs, and we can talk about that too. But it's interesting too, because anytime a 40B, now I sat previously on zoning in Pembroke, you've been on zoning, I've been on conservation, on a bunch of different committees, and it's always interesting to me that the 40B and the stigma, like you said, Joe, is not in my backyard. It's always not in my backyard. And it's interesting because you called it, the anti-snob thing,
yes.
right? But nobody wants it in their backyard. But people don't understand, and I think that this is what they should try to understand, and not go to just the one meeting where everyone's yelling and screaming at each other, but through the whole entire process. If you're in a butter and understand the process, if you get to the point where it's no, then they're gonna go to the state, and they're just gonna get a yes.
That's
and then
right.
you have zero control over what happens.
That's exactly right. So you're much better off, conditioning and trying to negotiate a 40B through the process of the zoning board than to say absolutely no. Because once you get to the state is it's very rare that a state overturns or sustains a no vote from a ZBA. The one thing I want to say though, because I was on the zoning board for a long time, 20 plus years, and we permitted a lot of the 40Bs in Pembroke in the 1980s and 1990s. I'm giving my age out here. Anyway, but I actually feel really happy when I look around now that there's not as much stigma or opposition or real just angst over these 40B developments. I think people have understood that most of them are very nice developments. They're done by professional developers. Some of them are investment grade property. Some of them are home ownership, but that they have been neighbors just like everyone else, and they really haven't diminished people's property value. They haven't, done terrible things to traffic or to the schools, which is another big, topic for the plug for the over 55. So I think that people's attitudes are changing, and I think particularly as they look at their own children growing up and having families who cannot find a place or afford a place to buy in not only their own community but even neighboring communities further out from perhaps where they live.
That's our wheelhouse, by the way, and Melissa in particular. Like, she can't find anything in her price range as a single young professional.
Right.
You just can't. And what is out there in her price range, you would need a lot of money to renovate. And what do you do? So what percentage is Pembroke right now? Let people know.
It's about 9.6%, and we're in the process of there's a development in the ZBA process right now that will put the town over 10%. And then there are a couple of other developers who have been talking to us, not with anything real definitive plans, but just some ideas about certain pieces of property in the town that we've been encouraging them to come to us with some ideas around what they're proposing to do. One of the things that we want to do, though, in these past 10% developments, is to look at our existing local zoning bylaws and use those as the baseline for negotiating, increased density for affordability and things like that, so that we don't rewrite the zoning bylaw.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Joe, tell us what's going on in Hanson. I mean, so you're on the planning board. So are you seeing a lot of these? Are they going right to ZBA, right?
They are. They go right to ZBA with their plans right from the get-go, and it does bring a stigma, as everybody says, the NIMBYs and things like that. It's the reality of it is that we should really change the title of affordable housing. It should be more secure housing. That's what it is. There's security.
Yeah.
When you have a home and you're secure in your home, you're able to invest in other things in your home because you have that security. The families that we have in the surrounding towns here on the South Shore, especially going through the pandemics or a recession, as long as that bill is paid for that mortgage or that rent, you may forego a meal for yourself or for your family. So it really is a huge factor.
Yeah.
So I myself feel calling it more secure housing than affordable changes possibly some of that stigma that's around.
Yeah, and me growing up in the city too, and I mean, this is no offense to any, because believe me, I sit on this, I want to be on this board because I want to make a difference, right? But I grew up in Dorchester, and I feel when people hear 40B, they're thinking of the old colony projects.
Right.
Not the old colony projects of today, but the old colony projects of the 80s and 70s and 60s.
Right.
And I think that's, and I know that Judy had just said that she thinks that the stigma has sort of gone, but from our perspective, it really hasn't. we're in there. I have 40B developments, and the first question people will ask, "Oh, is it a 40B?" I'm all set. Some people will say, or they'll want to know which units are, and we can't tell.
Right, and what happens? You have a developer that comes in. Generally, developers work fairly well with the zoning boards, but every once in a while, you do have a developer that comes in that doesn't really have a feel of the land. That's very important when you're living in a town and you're part of that town and you're vested in that community. To have a developer come in that doesn't have a feel of the land, doesn't have a boots on the ground attitude towards dealing with abutters and the rest of the town itself, the impact to the town. When you have somebody that comes in that just shirks that responsibility to really understand the impact of what they're getting ready to do, that's where you have a lot of kickback, and you have a lot of citizens that will be engaged and get engaged. And a lot of times when you hear that no, or you try to get that appeal to the state, a lot of wind is taken out of people's sails because it is a lengthy process. But everybody should know there is an appeal process. There's an appeal process for a lot of the things that are in as far as land use regulation, and you should always continue to interject. You can make a change. You can be impacting for a benefit for the town and you as an abutter. The affordable housing, when you're talking about people asking, which one's the unit that's they're all built the same. It's just that the fair market units make up the price for the subsidized units, or subsidized is a better term. That's a section.
Yeah.
Or for the 40B units, So it's but when you get friendly B development, when you get a developer or a builder that's invested and understands the impact, that's where it's a great symbiotic relationship, and everybody benefits in that aspect, I think.
Yeah.
I agree, and I think also we've had our share of developers who have not exactly worked well with the town. I do think one thing, though, is that and it was interesting you said about changing the name from affordable housing, because there are two kinds of sort of, I don't want to say affordable housing, but there's subsidized housing and then there's affordable housing, and they're very, very different. The subsidized housing is really geared toward people's income. It actually provides a subsidy, a payment for rent, and in some cases there is some very few like down payment assistance for some first-time home buyers, but it's a subsidy, and I think that you have to be really understand that it's very different than a 40B, where the developer is actually building more units than would be allowed, so that he can write down the rent costs on the ones that are quote unquote affordable. And again, like I said, we're talking about affordable units at the higher end. So the rents on these units are not $1,000. They're like more in the $2,500, $3,000 range, depending on the size of the unit and the income limits. So it's a very big distinction between that and really low income housing. Which both are needed, but I mean they are very different, hitting a very different target in the market.
It is really scary. I mean, I'm thinking right now of just the people who do call me, and people who are just looking for rentals or anything like that. And right now, it's huge for investors. Investors are out there big. I mean, it's no surprise to me that the project that they're doing next door isn't for units for sale; they're units for rent, because that's what that's what I'm seeing the developers do now. They're scooping up all these smaller homes themselves, and they're keeping them and they're renting them. And the reason why is, like in Pembroke, I know actually one of my agents, he owns a property that is Section 8, and it has 3 bedrooms. It's a small ranch, and I think they're getting like $3,200 to $3,300 a month, and that's subsidized. Yeah. So for an investor, that makes sense. Now it's not even costing you. You put in a little bit of money, you have a mortgage, and that rent is paying the mortgage plus. But that's taking away. It's great that it's giving housing to the person who needs it, Section 8, but it's not doing anything for the person who wants home ownership.
Right.
No, and the other thing, too, to remind yourself is that the Section 8 budgets, the HUD budgets, have not increased very much. So when those fair market rents go up, where the fair market rent is $3,300 for a ranch, that means that they can afford to pay rent on one, but maybe not two. Yep. So that people get more desperate, and those wait lists grow immensely because of that.
They grow and grow and grow. Because you're also on the committee for Housing Authority.
The Housing Authority. And I've spent most of my career in affordable housing, and I spent a lot of time working with projects in the Boston Housing Authority and stuff. So it's a scary world out there for people who are really low income. Very scary.
And too, I mean, I sort of hinted about what my show is going to be next week before we went on. And next week we're going to be doing homes in transition, and it's, you know, divorce and death and things like that. And that's a big portion of people that I'm seeing that, you know, it's great when you have two incomes for one house, but now when you have two incomes for two separate houses, it becomes very, very difficult for people. So the town of Hanson, do you know what your number is for percentage-wise, where you are?
We're just above, if I'm not mistaken, we're just above 4%. So we're really, really low. And a lot of the impact for that is land development in Hanson is difficult with a lot of the like conservation that we have.
Yeah.
You know, Hanson is a bedroom community. There's not a lot of commercial in Hanson, so the town really relies on its independent home ownership, single lot, that kind of.
Oh, I've never heard that term before.
Bedroom community.
Bedroom community,
Yeah,
so more
Hanson's
residential than.
Absolutely, 100%. You know, just over 10,000 people.
Yeah.
So it is extremely important in Hanson, the collaboration with our land use boards, having a strong ZBA, having a great planning office, a great town hall, second floor, office space that understand the impacts. And then what has been great in Hanson is there's been a lot of recent collaboration amongst all the land use boards, as well as our select board, and everybody kind of breaking down silos so that we can look at the impact of what these developments have from a 10,000-foot overview, you know, from what's the impact on the EMS services, what's the impact on the schools, what's the impact on the water, you know, Hanson's got town water, you know, so looking at that, when we have a 40B that comes into town, it is a major impact, and we're finally getting to the point, we've had 3 that have come into the town of Hanson, and we're finally getting to the point now where we're actually able to see some statistical data of what that's going to have and future growth in Hanson and what it could happen to be, whether it's a good or neutral or negative, you know. So it is extremely important that everybody takes the time to be able to look at that from a whole town approach instead of just not next to me, you know. That's it. So and that's where Hanson's going. Hanson's going in that direction. As well as the fact that the town itself is starting to become very creative. A lot of benefit to our town planner, Tony DeFrace, for doing that.
Yeah.
He's really become very creative, and that's where that article that went before town meeting came from.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about that.
Sure.
Hey,
I just want to add
Tim, I'm going to skip right through that commercial, okay? We're just going to keep going.
Okay.
You brought up the phrase land use, and I'll be honest with you. At the end of the day, the biggest issue with affordable housing has to do with land use, because all of our towns down here have 40,000 square foot minimum lot size for single family homes, massive subdivision roadways, all these things. And when you look at the actual land use policy, it really does not support building housing that's affordable, because if you have to have a lot that size, it limits how many obviously you can have, and it breaks up the land to the point where you get undevelopable pieces that were for something that would be a larger type development, and it's a huge problem.
Yeah, even little things. I know in the town of Pembroke, and I don't know what it is in Hanson or surrounding towns, but I remember when I was on ZBA, like, we don't even allow pork chop lots.
No, we don't.
Which, that's just crazy to me. I mean, what's it matter? I mean, I do recall, though, we did give a variance for somebody on Plymouth Street, and it was family owned. Family was across the street. Family owned it. They had a bunch of land out back. They wanted to build for their daughter, and it was allowed.
We have a caller.
We have a caller.
Wonderful.
Yes, we do. We have John in Marshfield.
Hello, John in Marshfield.
Hi. How are you guys doing today?
Good.
How are you?
Good.
Great. Hey, interesting show. Having gone through this process with my son, who bought a first-time home during the pandemic, like a couple of years ago, it kind of opened my mind to like what you're talking about in real life. And the thing that struck me was the least expensive houses require a pretty substantial income to buy. And like I noticed, like my son was looking like at $500,000 places at the time, and there were these huge bidding wars to get like the least expensive, not bad place. And if he spent like $600,000, a much nicer place was available. So what was happening was everybody who could stretch as far as they could go was going to 500, and there was like no market at 600 because that wasn't good enough for the people who wanted like a really nice house. It struck me as like the market is just completely broken, and the thing I left wondering was, why aren't like subsidies available for higher incomes, like in the real world, where the cheapest houses are a lot more expensive than what's subsidized?
I'm going to let our panelists take this one because I have my thoughts, but why don't you talk about it?
I think that one thing, and Sharon, you've said this too, that people are buying emotionally as opposed to buying,
market value.
Market value. And I think there's a couple other things. I think the other thing too is you have to always remind yourself that in the United States, wealth building is based upon housing. And it's based upon owning a home. And so if you don't get in the market, your ability to actually build wealth and build assets is really very limited. So and if you can look at people's retirement money and things like that, it just isn't that much. So that wealth building issue is a big part. And I think that people do get desperate. People...
the market has been reckless, John, to be quite frank with you. This is what I've been saying for 2 years. It's reckless. And it's so interesting because I frequently will talk people out of selling their house because I just don't think it's a good idea for them. And I try to give people the best. I don't consider myself, you call me and I just want to sell you a house or sell your house or help you buy a house. It's not that. It's like, let's look at this financially and what makes sense. So I'm telling people, my buyer clients, if they're looking at a $500,000 house and we know that there are going to be multiple offers on it, I will give them strategies on how they can get that house. But I always say, this is where I think the market value is of this house. If you choose to go over that, that's emotional. I have no gauge, no compass to tell anybody how much they want for that house. Now, the problem is what your son and what you were seeing between the $500,000 house and people, 25 people bidding on it, getting up to $600,000. The problem is a lot of those people are the ones that could afford a $600,000 house, but they were getting outbid of those houses because people were going up to $700,000. So now your son was in a pool of people in the 500 list price range that really could afford 600. That's what was happening.
I think you're true, but there's another side of that. The other side of that, there's a lot of people who stretched to the moon don't qualify and can't do the 600. So in the real world we're in, you have a massive number of people trying to get the least affordable, livable place. And they should, I disagree because they should be buying $400,000 houses.
They should be. They should be. But it's right. It has been reckless.
But it doesn't exist. And so this market that exists right now, and on my street, it's interesting because two houses very similar. There was one that was on the market for $595, which they priced under the market. It sold for $635 in a bidding war, and there was like traffic down the street of people waiting. Here's the interesting: a much nicer house, bigger square footage, better location for $725 that I think is worth more than that, sold for asking price. No bidding war, and took a little time. So you have this like squeeze of people who, to your point, should be spending $400. They need a place to live. So that tells me the market is broken on the low to middle end. And I just when you talk about subsidies, the people buying that house, like they need help. And the amount of money it costs to qualify for that is a very substantial income.
But the thing,
right?
the problem...
we're talking low income. We're talking middle to even upper income people at this interest rate, at this level. Middle to upper middle income people need a subsidy to get a decent house.
Or they need rich parents.
That's the sign of a broken market.
That's what we're seeing is people with rich parents.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think that then the other problem is that at the lower end, the land costs are driving up the value of this real estate. Because I have looked at a few $500,000 houses with Sharon for a friend, and what struck me was that it wasn't the house that, quite frankly, to me had the value. It had a nice lot. And I think that when you look at the land values of and the land costs of a couple $100,000 a lot, you have to build a larger house on it in order to recoup. So what's happened is until we as communities want to address this issue of land use, as Joe brought up, and say, you know what, it's okay to build a two-family house. It's okay to have a smaller lots than 40,000 square feet. Until we can do that, who needs a 40-foot front yard? Let's be honest. Whoever goes in a 40-foot front yard.
Well, nobody, because they're all working.
That's what I'm saying. So the thing is, there are things that are land use that we need to do that would actually drop some of these costs, because because if the land values were less, then the housing cost would be less, and there'd be bigger inventory. So I think that we as these towns, particularly down here on the South Shore, need to look at these zoning requirements and these single family house requirements and make some big changes. I mean, there are, interestingly enough, a number of developments in the South Shore, Marshfield included, Pembroke, where they built smaller homes on smaller lots, and they're all doing pretty well. But we don't want to do that anymore, and that's a big problem.
And the cost too. And I'm sure
because so many of these towns are either built out in terms of new developable lots, or close to build out level. What the developer would say to you is this: I get 2, 3, I just don't get much inventory. I don't get much chance to build. So when I do, I got to make the most of it because I got to pay my bills. So I can't put inexpensive houses with low profit margins. I can't build those because I can't get much land. So it's like this catch-22 where like everybody has a reason for what the way it is. And what struck me is I've lived in other areas of the country that are just not as volatile and cyclical as the real estate market is here. And it strikes me that it's because these other markets are like normal free markets. This is like such a heavily regulated, gamed market in terms of like limited availability, very tight zoning, all these restrictions. And what happens is no one moves. Like the market gets frozen, there's no activity. And then just because of a lack of supply, the supply-demand thing just gets warped. And then every 20 years, it blows up. Like 1990, blow up. 2005, blow up. And it takes like a recession to get that and correct the market. Otherwise, it just floats with no inventory.
And the low inventory issue that we have, sorry to interrupt you too, is because you did mention something about rates, and I want to let you know that right now we have what we're calling the lock-in effect, and we have a lot of people. There are 70% of people in the United States right now that have a mortgage. Their mortgage rate is less than 4%. Now they're up in the 7s, which when I bought my house in 1992, I think it was 8. But people are seeing that as abnormal, and I think that one of the mistakes that was made was when those rates went down to 2.5. I mean, mine is like 2.375 or something. It's just ridiculous. But they should have made that only for purchase, not for a refi. Because that's why no one's leaving. They're locked in, and there's no place they can go, not even laterally.
That's where you get that lender responsibility.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So sorry, John, I know that you were talking, so keep on with your thoughts there.
No, I mean, and that just exacerbates the phenomenon I was talking about, which is the limited inventory is now limited by 2 factors. Number one, no one's losing their job. The unemployment rate is a 50-year high. 50-year low, rather. So no one's forced to sell. And it seems to me what drives inventory here, sadly, and no one wants to talk about this, what drives inventory here is recessions. 1990, 2008, massive unemployment, people have to sell, market prices come down. Like, we just wait for these these really traumatic events. And like you said, exacerbating the small inventory is the fact now that the people with 3% mortgages, and my son locked in at 2.875, he's not going to be moving anytime soon. So now you have a tight inventory market that's even tighter because people are locked into unusually low. Someone said that these are like 3,000-year low rates. Like, if you look at what it costs to borrow like 1,000 years
It was free money.
Free money.
Free money.
Yeah, that's what we were saying. This is free money. It was really ridiculous. And one of the things too, though, when you're talking about the builders, and I don't think it's as much about an ROI situation as it is, it is very, very expensive. And this is what I want to talk to Joe about because he sits on the planning board in Hanson. The cost for a builder, now I do a lot of new construction. I have a 92-lot subdivision or unit subdivision in West Bridgewater, and I'm going to be doing a 40-unit one in Hanson. I don't know if you know I'm the listing agent on that. Did I ever tell you that?
No, you didn't.
Yeah,
But that's
so
okay.
I'm the one there. We have to change the name of it, by the way.
It goes with the ZBA. It doesn't go with the planning board.
Okay,
There's a
perfect,
conflict
yeah.
there.
But, the thing is that what I just thought of it, by the way, so I'm sorry about that. I should have
So
mentioned it
quite all
before.
right.
Yeah, but the cost to put the road in now, and I'm not talking about the asphalt itself, but just the cost of everything, the engineering, the utilities, the permitting, and everything that goes along with that. In the last 10 years, or last probably 5 to 7 years, that has increased for the builders from about $625 per square foot to over $1,000. It's doubled. So this is where a bigger problem is, and I don't blame a builder for not wanting to do it. I wouldn't either. I'm not going to spend 3 years on a development to be equal.
Right.
I'd rather retire. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't do that for fun.
And then you turn the table to the... Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the other thing is, it seems to me that, and again, my perspective is not the area you're talking about, like in Hanson. I've been looking at places like Marshfield, and granted, like Duxbury and Situate too. It looks like the houses that are going up are well over $1 million, and like I'm not exaggerating. Like that's like the typical new house. That just seems. It feels like the town could be more restrictive in terms of permits that are allowed. Like, can you say we need some stuff under $1 million? I mean,
but maybe not less restrictive, but more appealing, more opening. Like, hey, you don't have to have this 40 square lot subdivision, right? So, like one of the subdivisions I'm thinking about in Marshfield that I've sold to clients is, up on Holly Hill, right? So that's in Marshfield, over $1 million. And I know exactly what you're saying. In Duxbury, over $1 million. And we have them here in Pembroke, over $1 million. I'm in West Bridgewater. We just sold one recently for close to $1 million, but it's because of the restrictions. I don't think it's the builder's fault.
It's all about zoning.
It's all about, exactly right.
Saying, there's million. No, that's just like the ordinary house.
Yeah.
It's all about zoning.
$1 million.
If you look back towards the post-World War II era, look where the Campanellis built. Look where they put in all of those... concrete flat.
Yeah, the Henrich Ranch too,
so
right?
the ranch. Look where they built. Look in the areas that they were in. It was farmland, marshland. But look what those are going for now. Look at that investment. But look what they did. They were very creative and looking at their zoning and finding out what they could do for the post-World War II families that were around the area.
And that is something too, is, we also have two demographics looking for the same style of homes, right?
Yeah.
So I call it right sizing when you're selling your big 4-bedroom colonial, right? It's not a downsizing. It's not downer. It's just the right size for you right now. So we have those people. Then we have that first-time home buyer that wants to get into their first home, and it just tends to be the smaller ranches. So now we have two demographics looking for the same exact product. You know what? The right sizer is the one that has the upper hand in that, because they're selling their 4-bedroom colonial, ending up with a lot of equity. Now, one of the things that's different from today versus some of the history you were bringing up in 2005 is people think we're going to see all these foreclosures, and the way, with recession, with people losing jobs and everything, the problem that I see is if people start losing jobs, things are going to be a little different than they were in 2005, because in 2005 it was zero money down, 100% financing. They didn't have their skin in the game. They lost their job. They left the keys on the counter. What we're seeing now is people selling that one house to buy the other house. Rates were low, putting all of their equity into that house. You lose your job, you have $300,000 into that house, you're not giving the keys over. And P.S., you're also not refinancing because you're at 2.5.
Right.
So what do they do?
But you do have to sell your house, and you end up getting $550 for the $750,000 house because you're moving to Albuquerque, and you take it. You do walk away with a couple $100,000 of equity. The better example is 1990, where none of that stuff is true, but you had just a garden variety, really bad recession. And what happened then is you had 5 years of very, very no appreciation, and 20 to 30% losses over 4 or 5 years, and that could be real. But you're right. We're not going through a subprime crisis where people will make money by turning in the keys the way they did in 2008.
Yeah, and too, that thing is what you were saying. Sell the 700.
It's kind of events to open this up because at 3.4% unemployment, no one's moving. And there's nothing available. And to your point, what's available, the seller is completely in charge. Here's what I want. You're going to pay it, fine. If not,
someone
see
else
you later.
will. Someone else will. Yep. Well, John, you brought up some really great points, and I think you sort of get me fiery inside, because I really think it comes down to zoning. And I don't have anybody from the zoning board on this show with me today, so we're just going to beat up the zoning board.
Well, actually, it's the planning board, because zoning board is the zoning board of appeals.
Yeah.
And the planning board is the one who makes the zoning recommendations and zoning and plans for how land use is
All
done.
right, then we're going to beat Joe up.
So I
would
just
beat
bring it
Joe
up
up.
again. When you want to do the right thing, but it's also educating people.
Yeah.
Right.
Because people have this idea that they really need this large lot. I mean, look, if you're a gardener like I am and you garden every square foot, that's one thing. But like I said, most people never even use their yards.
Which is why the 40Bs, I mean, I have done several 40Bs, and I've done the 55 plus, I've done all. And a lot of times people do like that smaller lot because they don't, you know what, both mom and dad, dad and dad, whoever it is, the kids, you know, they're working. They don't want, then on the weekends, they have to do the food shopping. They have to, you know, clean the house, soccer, baseball, all these other things that they're doing and responsible for. And the birthday parties. I mean, those are out of hand, I hear, with the young kids. So that's what they're doing. So they don't want to be in the yard just playing with it. And honestly, I have 1.36 acres at my house. I look out my window some mornings and I was like, ooh. Like, even just last weekend, it was just like, what are we going to do here?
But our local landscaping companies are loving it.
They are loving it.
Oh, yeah.
And I love it.
I'm not going to lie. I do have somebody that comes and cuts my lawn. But
you have, like, the most beautiful yard.
I appreciate you doing the show, because when you ask people what the biggest problems in the state are, housing is in the top 2 or 3, and people mention it right away. And what struck me is it's the big problem that everybody admits to that nobody wants to deal with. It's the only problem I know that people we know it's a problem, but well, hopefully it'll get better. Like all of the problems we address, this is like the problem we admit that we just kind of don't want to admit we want to deal with.
There's so many difficulties, though, John. There's so many facets of it. When you really go to a 10,000 overview, 10,000-foot overview, there's so much, and then you have. You have old Beacon Hill cramming down each individual state, each individual town with regulation that you just can't. It's
Can
not
we talk
realistic.
about that? Let's talk about the MBTA thing.
But I think the other thing too, though, is that we have to be honest.
That's a whole other show.
That there's a whole other show.
Good, then you'll come back.
There's a history here of why the housing market is the way it is
Sure.
too. I mean, I think we can't overlook the sort of the evolution of housing within the city of Boston itself, which really drove sort of the triple deckers and things like that. And then when people moved out of the city, they didn't want to have the triple deckers in their neighborhood. They didn't want that. And then there was a whole issue of redlining. I mean, there's a lot of factors that went into creating this morass of housing, the lack of housing that we have right now. And I think it's, when you look at older cities, or you look at places like the West Coast, like California, the D.C. area, New York area, these problems exist in all of these areas. But a lot of it was driven by the way that the city itself was occupied. And if you look at even the history of public housing, when they took the income limit, the limits in terms of how much you could earn off public housing, it changed the whole demographic. It changed the way that it was used and everything else. And that became a wedge to build some of these, the post-World War II, little plats and developments that were done. So the history of housing in these areas, especially in the Northeast, is really. It set the context for the mess that we have right now.
I want you to. Can we create a course together and do something?
We should.
I would really like to do that, because I think it's so interesting. And again, as a real estate agent, I'm seeing this. I'm on the front lines. When I tell you how terrible I feel for my clients, I can't tell you to pay any more for this house, because this is where this is the market value of it. This is all emotions. I don't have a compass for that. And we only have 7 minutes left. And one of the things I really want to talk about, and John, was there any other pinpoints? Just feel free to stay on here with us. But I definitely want to talk to Joe about the new article that was passed in Hanson, because will that help? And I want to know all the details.
So, will that...
Yeah, the one thing I was going to mention, too, on top of everything you mentioned, half of the market, the entire eastern suburbs, is occupied by fish. And that's a problem, too.
Yeah.
Right?
And they're gaining on us.
That's a good one, John. I'm going to have to use that another time,
Absolutely.
I got to run, but thank you very much for doing a great show.
Thank you so much for calling,
Great
John.
content.
Yes.
Thanks, John. Yeah, great
Thank you.
topic.
Bye.
Thank you.
So you asked, will it help? Will the detached accessory apartments? That's what the new zoning change is. Will
Are they
it help?
specifically apartments?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, detached accessory apartments.
So tell us
Detached
exactly what it is.
accessory
Like,
dwelling.
how much square footage can it be? Does it have to be family? You tell us all of
Yeah,
those.
900 square feet. So it's completely detached. It has to be autonomous from the main structure. So it has to be on the same lot as the single-family dwelling, located as a detached structure. So a garage, a barn, a carriage house, anything like a chicken coop or a greenhouse, that just doesn't work. It's in our residential A and our double A and our B districts only. So the purpose of it and the reason for it is to create a balanced, diverse population, income mix where you get seniors and then the younger generation coming through to be able to have a place to go. There's heavy rules and regulations, just like all the building. It's not like somebody could just lift up a garage and say, I'm going to have an apartment up above. So it's applicable to all, septic, building codes, safety regulations.
So let me ask you that. So does it can it tie into the house, or does it have to have its own septic?
No, it will tie into the existing septic. So that's one of the heavier regulations, is that you have to have the space, 1,500 gallon, that kind of a thing. So you do have to be able to utilize. Can't have two septics on one lot.
But doesn't have to be 40 square feet. Does it have to be a 40 square foot lot? 40,000.
Our lots are 30,000 and 40,000, so it would be on existing lots.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. So 30,000 and 40,000. So
Okay.
it would be on an existing lot. And the purpose behind it, all of it, and what was kind of driving this, is we actually had some residents in Hanson that came to the town and asked about this very specific. All of our in-law type apartments, there's a lot of regulation where it has to be attached to the building, and people want to have that separation.
Yeah.
You want to be able to have that little private spot, now I'm going to age myself, the Fonzie, up above the garage, so that's what I was saying at town meeting. I was calling it, the Fonzie article, but that's what you want to be able to have. You want to be able to have that separation, but at the same time, we understand that, that people by having that separation, what it's allowing them possibly to do is, as John was saying, not sell and move away, because you can stay with your family. You've got your home security. If you're a senior, you can pass down the main structure to maybe your younger family, and then stay on property and have that security of having family close by, or a young college student just a few towns away going to that wonderful Bridgewater State University, where they want to commute back and forth but not have to worry about coming down from the city to go. So it's be able to have that local area, and at the same time being respectful of the town of Hanson itself. It is, like I was saying earlier on, a bedroom community. 1 acre lots, that very quintessential New England type farmhouse. Talk about some of the things that needs to come back, fishing and farming, So to have that, to be able to really encapsulate that inside and have the proper regulations so that we can grab onto what's already happening. Some of the stuff, and I'm not looking to toss anybody under, but some of this is already happening in our local towns. So we have all that, and there's a lot of infractions that have concerns. I'm sure that our EMS services, when they find out that there's a propane tank somewhere, it's a concern. So by having that regulation and not trying to overregulate, certainly not trying to, but by having that and being able to develop this new zoning change, we're able to change a little bit of the town. Certainly not to go from 4% to 10%, and then we say, okay, we're all set for affordable housing, but be able to add to some of what we're trying to do in Hanson and be respectful to everybody across the board, the citizens themselves, the town departments, and try to grab some of this affordability.
So those units will count towards your affordable?
No.
No,
they won't. We're going to try to see future on down the road. We're going to try to see if we can get some of that regulation changed.
Okay.
So it's going to be the next. If we find enough units are being built and this really is attractive, and we find it, we'll put our attentions on to making requests through local legislation to possibly get that, so we can grab onto that.
And what about, does it have to be family? And we only have 3 minutes left. I can't believe it, but I hope that you will come back so we can talk about the MBTA stuff too as well. But what about, does it have to be family member that's living in that unit?
It doesn't have to be a family member. So the owner of the single family house, it has to occupy the dwelling units, must occupy the structure full time for a minimum of 18 months for the 24-month period.
Either structure?
That's the home ownership. That's the main structure.
The main structure. The homeowner has to be in that.
So you can't be snowbirders going away and just leave the property to your renters and stuff. When the owners aren't present, the main occupancy must remain vacant. You couldn't snowbird and then rent out your existing main dwelling. So we really went through a lot of thought. There was a lot of thought put into the protections of this article going before town meeting, and it did pass. We're very happy about that.
You're going to leave that with me?
I can
okay,
absolutely.
Perfect. Yeah, I tried looking for it. Because
paperwork.
What I think is interesting too is there is a unit in Pembroke, and it's legal because they have all the paperwork, and it is separate from the house. And ours in Pembroke definitely are not like that, and most communities are not.
Right.
But to me, I was like, this is much better than having somebody like really attached to your house. And this is like, won't you be my neighbor? This is our outgoing music. So I'm sorry, but you will come back.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Do you think that something like this should be in Pembroke?
I do think it should be in Pembroke. I mean, and actually, we permitted one of the detached in-law with a variance at one point.
Yeah,
I
so
do think.
that's probably when I was in.
I also don't think that we need to limit it to 900 square feet either.
I know. All right, so we're gonna have to take this up another time. I'm gonna get together with our guests, and we'll plan another show. And you want to give everyone our outro here?
Yeah, if you want to listen to any of our past shows, talkrealestateroundtable.com, go to bostonconnect.com to find all of our contact information. And you can listen to any of our shows, but re-listen to this one.
Yeah, this was a good one. Thank you. And our caller, John, thank you so much.
Thanks
Thank you
for
so
having me.
much.
Thank
We have
you.
so
Thank
much
you.
to talk about, though.
Yes.
All right, sounds like a plan.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Won't you please won't you be my neighbor?
WATD FM Marshfield, WBMS Brockton.